It's a beautiful thing.
We in 6 countries. That's
yes.
What I mean. So that's what they just send out to me.
Shout out to everybody. Shout out to everybody. We love y'all.
Yes. Thank y'all for listening.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the channel. I'm Coach Deb, representing one half of the Healing Corner podcast. If you're interested in booking a consultation as well as service or a reading, go ahead and check me out at debshealingcornerstone.com.
I'm Coach Yams, owner of Healing is Work Coaching, and I help millennial professional women to live on purpose unapologetically and to help them to stop doing shit out of obligation. If you need help with that, reach out to me, Coach Yams, YAMZ.com. Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Healing Corner podcast. We are here today with the topic of finances. We want to talk about financial health the month of October. And so to do that, we have a guest today, Tra Talley. And Trey is a community leader and a securities and insurance licensed senior financial advisor with 18 years of experience. Trey is passionate about helping to build wealth and is dedicated to helping individuals and businesses develop financial and investment strategies that line up with their needs, goals, and risk tolerance. And I forgot to mention today's title. The title for this episode is Legacy of Healing, Building Black Wealth for Freedom. So I'm Coach Yams. I've got my co-host here, Coach Deb, and we've got our guest. And so Trey, we're going to give it to you to just let us know, like, how did you get on this path of doing this work for 18 years and falling in love with it and becoming passionate about it?
Thank you all so much for having me. And let me just say, y'all intro music is the bop. I came in hearing it, had to start nodding my head, so it makes me feel all good and fuzzy inside.
Hey.
and I appreciate the intro. You make me sound big out here in these streets, so I'm grateful. To answer your question, how did I get started in the industry? Well, I met a chick. Just being completely honest, I was dating a young lady, and her uncle was retiring, and she invited me to his retirement party. I had just moved from California down to Texas for a job. I was in California for a year, doing all the training, getting all the certification, got my 6 Sigma black belt, and I was a process improvement analyst. And I came to Texas, and 6 months later, they cut our whole division. So I'm in Texas now, been here for 6 months, newly unemployed, talking to this girl. She invited me to a dinner, a retirement dinner, and come to find out it was being thrown by her uncle's financial advisor. So we go through the dinner. He kind of gives his spiel about what he does and how he helped her uncle retire. I got kind of interested because he was talking about money, and I ain't really had none. I wanted some. So I started asking him questions, and he tried to recruit me. I started doing research in the industry, and I ended up at another company. But 18 years, I'm still doing it, and it's kind of been enlightening. I remember when I first got into the industry, I was mad at my mother. I was like, why you didn't teach us none of this stuff? Like, why didn't I know this? If I would have knew this, I'd been in a better place. Not realizing my arrogance that she didn't tell me about it because she didn't know about it. And that was like a common thread in our community. We don't talk about money around the dinner table, and that's a problem. Because people who don't look like us, they've been having those conversations. They've been passing around wealth and passing down legacy. And we're starting behind the 8 ball, but that's okay. Like, we have options and we have abilities, especially in the information age. We have capabilities to kind of do some dope shit on our own. So that's kind of how I got in the industry, and I fell in love with it because we need this information, and we need people who look like us kind of spreading the information to us.
I love that, because actually I wanted to ask the question about, like, when you first got started, since you have been doing this for 18 years plus, What type of barriers did you like come in contact with when it comes to like spreading the knowledge or, making this be some type of awareness in our community?
So let's just talk about the industry as a whole. One, I'm Black, and it's not a lot of us in the industry, period. So typically, whenever we have market meetings or whenever you see financial advisors, there's not. I'm always one of two or three in the room. So it's a predominantly white industry. Two, Black people are super conservative with their coins when it comes to saving and investing, but super unconservative when it comes to spending. So we consume at a high level, but we don't necessarily invest at the same level. At least that's from a historical lens. So for me, the barriers were one, building credibility, because I started doing this when I was 23. So I don't have a lot of life experience, and I'm trying to talk to grown people about managing their money. Two, it's a lot of knowledge. It takes a lot to get licensed, and it takes a lot to kind of get in a position where you know what you're talking about, to be, and it's just more of an integrity conversation, to be open to talk to people about their life savings. Like, this is some of the more important conversations you can have in life. Like, how do I make sure that I'm not going to run out of money in retirement? How do I make sure that I'm not going to retire at 80 and have to go back to do a job that's not necessarily age appropriate because I don't have any money? How do I make sure that I'm going to be able to take care of myself in my most crucial years? So really the knowledge gap is real, and if you don't have that information, if you haven't been predisposed to it, you're starting from the beginning. So you learn it from scratch. And when I got in the industry, it wasn't like it is right now, where everybody has a YouTube channel where they're talking about investing, they're talking about trading options, they're talking about crypto, and you can go online and figure all this stuff out. That information wasn't readily accessible like it is today. So really getting in there and building credibility as a young black dude from the east side of Detroit is, that's always going to be a barrier. But once you get on the other side of it and you start getting comfortable with who you are and what you know, and then you start helping people, and you start seeing how your information and your advice can kind of change people's life, it just becomes worth it.
My question is, now that there is so much information and you have the experience under your belt, do you feel like, obviously the conversations are easier because you have the experience to do it, but do you feel like our community has come around more because there is more information available since you started?
Somewhat. Somewhat. I mean, so historically, black people have been less likely than white Americans to have discussed the stock market growing up. But if we look at the last few years, that gap is closed. We get, at my job, we got to get the statistic information in as 2022. Like, if we're talking about black and white investors, white families are about 43% likely to have talked about investing in their life, and black families are 41 now. And if we're talking about people under 40, we're both around 75% more likely than our elders to talk about investing. So the younger we are, the more exposure we have to this. So that information gap has changed, and the opportunities change as well. So I like to kind of start with like hard numbers, because I know in my intro you said I'm a community leader, and basically I'm a civil rights activist. So I advocate and I fight for people who look like us, and I'm passionate about it. But we do have numbers. I mean, so we have to look at the historical references. Slavery did happen. We were slaves in this country. That had impression, and it continues to have impression. There are systemic racial inequalities that we're still dealing with. All those things are true. There has been and there is, income disparity and income discrimination. We do have redlining. There has been um, different opportunities presented to us based on home ownership and things of that sort. So we are operating in a deficit on a lot of levels. But that's a problem that we've been fighting forever. So I always say, okay, if that's that, then what do we do? And what do we do is kind of look at where we are right now. 8% of millionaires in the US right now are Black. That's 1.8 million households. Our buying power grew from what 320 billion, 320 billion in 1990 to 1.8 trillion like in 2024. That's huge. We got to, if we were a country, we'd be the 15th largest economy. You think about Black-owned businesses. Our Black-owned business, the revenue growth is twice the average of the average U.S. Employer. I mean, so that's a big deal. And our median age is only 32. So we got a lot of young Black people, and we got a chance to kind of change the legacy question. How do we want to move from this point forward? Like I got a tattoo of Sankofa duck on my arm, and it means to move forward, you have to look back. So we look back at what the historical context is and say, okay, that's where we are. That's where we were. But now who do we want to be moving forward? So to answer your question, the biggest thing is kind of starting where we are. We have the resources, clearly. If we're consuming at this level, the 15th biggest economy in the world, we have the resources. What we need is just a knowledge base. How do we become more disciplined in how we use our money? What if we pay ourselves first before we pay retailers? What if we start off with a plan? We start saving, we start budgeting, we start investing, we start getting life insurance, we start passing money down to our next generation. How quick can we kind of put a dent into that wealth gap?
I like how you were explaining kind of like, going into the economic independence of the Black community. So what type of keys would you say when it comes to financial literacy people really need right now?
Read. I think that every Black person should read Richest Man in Babylon. If you start there, you'll be okay. And one of the biggest thing they talk about, and it's a really quick book. It's if you get it on Audible, which I read everything, it's like a 45-minute read. But the first thing they talk about is pay yourself first. So if I'm talking to a new client, and my goal, and I kind of say this, my goal is to help create 100 Black millionaires. So help 100 Black millionaires. That means to do that, you have to start with people where people are. So that's people, out of high school, in college, young 20s, just starting off, just getting into good habits. And the first thing I tell them is like, make sure you start off with a plan. So you should have a budget. You should write out a plan moving forward. What I want my life to look like financially. And then once you get that plan, you set a budget, and your budget should highlight the things that are most important to you. And when we look at our budget, the first thing people put on there, okay, let me see, I got my mortgage, my rent, I got to pay my bills, I got gas, I got food, and they always forget themselves. And I think about it like, shit, you the one working the 40 to 50 hours a week. So how you gonna get the electricity company money before you pay yourself? Because if you ain't doing this, none of this shit move. Like none of this stuff works. So prioritize yourself first, and that should be in your budget. So I say treat your budget like treat yourself like you treat your tithes. So if you're a Christian and you tithe 10%, then you need to pay yourself 10% too right after. Every dollar that come in, you earn or receive, 10% goes to the pay yourself first fund. And that's not money for bills. That's not money for emergency savings. That's money that's going to make you money. I call that the bunny rabbit account because you put multiple bunny rabbits in there, they get it on, they making more bunny rabbits until that cup starts to overflow. And that's kind of how you got to look at it. You keep paying yourself. You start early and you do it consistently, and you do it forever, and you're going to be in a good shape. we're going to be really, really good shape. What we do with building wealth, we try to make it really, really complicated. And it's not. It's super simple. All you got to do is spend less than you earn. And I know that sounds kind of elitist in itself when we talk about how high inflation is. But you do these things when you're poor. I think you do bad. You build good habits when everything is good. If you start this when you don't have it, then once you start getting it, it's going to be a lot easier. So if you only make $1, then you got to pay yourself 10 cents and the 90 cents can go elsewhere. But that first 10 cents got to go to you.
I love that a lot. I'm actually in the process of learning this lesson and incorporating it into my life. And so, what my follow up question to this would be, what mindset shifts, what language shifts, what would you recommend for the person who has to learn to create these healthier habits with their money so that they can not feel shame or guilt for
Mhm.
paying themselves first?
Man, that's a great question. So I'm in the process right now. I'm committed to losing weight, to getting completely healthy, as far as physically, and it's hard because you start thinking about diet and you start thinking about how complicated it is and what you gotta cut. You can count macros on that, but if you just simplify it, like if you just simplify it and say, you know what, all I really need to do is operate at a caloric deficit. If I take in less calories than I'm expelling, I'm gonna be okay. Period. So if my goal is 2,000 calories, and I know and I figure out what it takes to do 2,000 calories, and I'm burning off 2,500 calories a day, then I'm operating at a 500 calorie deficit. If you do the same thing with your money and you say, you know what, if I earn 3,000 a week, oh that's a lot. Let's knock that down. If I own 1,000 a week and I only spend 700 a week, then I've saved $300. And with that $300, if I'm paying myself first, so that's $100 there. Then I got $200 to kind of save and invest and do other things with. So really, the biggest change I try to do is like just simplify it. Like you don't have to check out the Earn Your Leisure podcast and watch Market Mondays or the Wall Street Trapper and think you need to be an options genius and get frustrated when you don't understand how options work. You don't have to be a crypto expert. All you have to do is pay yourself first. Just pay yourself first, spend less than you bring in, and do it consistently. And just be disciplined about it. That's the biggest thing. Just change a little bit of your habits. Just pay yourself first and spend less. That's it.
So, my question I wanted to ask is, well, I kind of give a background on like how I've done things because I've always been good at saving money. Like I could save money and almost go on like a mini retirement or like a time where I don't have to work. But I always find it difficult to find where to put an investment at to make more money. So, and then I've even tried to like take classes, but sometimes it's kind of like the information, like how you said, it's like a overload or you feel still intimidated. Like how can someone in that position in our community kind of conquer or overcome that?
No, that's a great question. Um, and kudos to you for saving and being a saver. That's the first step. If you can save, you can definitely invest. The problem with saving is that you can't outpace inflation with saving. You just look at how much a carton of eggs costs now versus how much they cost 10 years ago. Or I think about when I first started driving and gas was what 115 a gallon. And even though it's cheaper than it was a few years ago, it's still over $3 a gallon now. So that's the big deal. So you have to invest to kind of outpace inflation, because a dollar today is not going to be worth a dollar tomorrow. So the best thing you can do is just really, again, I always say, keep it simple, keep it diversified. Just get a simple index fund. Like if you're starting off, it's easy just to start with index funds where you own a little bit of everything. So your money's kind of spread out. You own the complete market. Like so say if you got the S&P 500 fund, you own the 500 biggest companies in the U.S. So that's going to give you full exposure to the entire market for the most part. And all you have to do is just dollar cost average. And that means that if you're saving, if you're systematically just putting in, it's going to compound on top of each other. And then at that point, if your goal is really long term, you don't care if the market goes up or the market goes down, because if it goes up, okay, that's good. But if it goes down, then you're adding money in, so you're just buying more shares for less money. And when that money when that price goes back up, then those shares you bought will be worth more. So it's not necessarily a cheat code or a secret to invest in. The secret is really just consistency. Like start something really simple and keep doing it for a long period of time and let it compound on top of each other. So that's why I say look at a mutual fund that's going to be super diversified and cheap, or look at an index funds that have low internal fees and you can just add money into it. And look at life insurance. Life insurance isn't a catch-all, but it is important. And you can really, if you're talking about permanent life insurance, you can get a variable universal life policy where you have cash value and you can take that money out if you need it. So it's not just a death benefit, you have living benefit in it as well. But within those policies, you can have the S&P 500. You can have different type of investment vehicles. On top of it, you have a basically a tax-free cash base that can operate either the death benefit if you die, or income, or a lending box if you need it while you're living.
Okay, and now that you brought that up, thank you so much for that, 'cause, actually putting these in my notes. So, when it comes to, like, life insurance, because I do have a life insurance policy, but it's, through the people that my employer.
So
What
it's
do you
term.
say about, that type of insurance? Is it better to have it through the employer, or is it better to have it outside of your employer?
Both. So you want it through the employer because you get it at a deep discount. But just know that it's a term policy, and it's permanent term as long as you work for that employee, unless there's some type of option to buy at the end. So typically when employers offer life insurance, they're offering a term policy, and what a term policy means is that it's going to expire. So it's like car insurance. So you don't use it, you lose it. So if you don't die within that term, you donate to the life insurance company, which is okay. Term policies are important. You should definitely have your own permanent insurance. And I say that you will never be younger or healthier than you are right now. As you get older, life insurance get a lot more expensive. So if you're thinking about life insurance, and even if you don't want to put a lot in right now, the good thing about life insurance, and I always talk about variable universal life. One, because you kind of you kind of have access to your money, but two, you can add more to it if you want to. You can add more to it if you want to. Like for instance, I have a policy now where I'm putting 20,000 in a year. But if my situation changed later and it's a permanent policy, I only have to put it in for 5 years. That was my term. So say you're doing 6,000 a year, you only have to do it for 5 years or whatever the case might be, and then that policy is kind of paid up. But you have a cash value, you can continue to add to it. So say 10 years from now, Lord forbid, you know, something happened medically where maybe you have a cancer scare or something else where you're no longer insurable, you already have life insurance out there, and you can add money to it because that policy is already in force. So everybody should have their own permanent life insurance. That's essential because that's going to be one of the easiest and more substantial, outside of maybe real estate, ways to pass wealth, and you pass it tax free.
I got so many questions, Yams. I know you probably want to talk. I have one more question about trust.
Mhm.
What would you say when it comes to trust? What are some of the good ones to start with?
You said trust, like living trust or irrevocable trust.
Yes.
So the reason why trusts are good because you can tell exactly what you want to happen when you're no longer here. So a trust becomes the owner of your assets. So a lot of people like will. So I prefer trust over will because wills have to be probated. Probates are public, of course. So um, and it has to go through the whole probate process where the trust becomes the owner. So, for instance, if I have multiple properties, I can put my properties in a trust, and I'm no longer the owner, but the trust is the owner. Now, say I get older and I have some type of medical issue. Um, Lord forbid, I just see it often, but say I have dementia, and I want to use Medicaid. Well, the federal government, they're going to force you to spend down all your assets before they'll contribute, and they do a 5-year look back. So if the assets are in your name, you have to do a spend down. You have to spend down all these assets before you can get Medicaid to kind of help with medical expenses. Whereas if it's in a trust, the trust becomes the owner. Now the trust is the owner, you're no longer the owner. And that's the same thing with properties if you have a business or if you want to protect yourself. The trust becomes the owner and your assets are separate from the trust. But you still have access to those assets while they're in the trust. So if you're a trustee, you can still take money from your trust documents. I mean from your trust account. And you can put anything in a trust. You put your real estate, you can put your investments, anything but retirement account. Retirement accounts wouldn't go into trust because then it becomes taxable. But I think more people than have trust should have trust. We don't talk about it enough, and we don't utilize it enough. But you can have a living trust or irrevocable trust. If it's irrevocable, you can't make any changes. If it's a living trust, then it becomes irrevocable after you die. Did that
Thank
answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you. All of this has been good. Um, so the question that I have that want to ask, which kind of brings all of this like together into a thing, because you've gone into depth about a few different ways to build wealth. Can you give or like some like five or however many like main bullet point items would set an individual or family up to start building black wealth? What things do they need to have in place?
That's a great question, and let me just give this this disclosure. There's no right answer, and there's no one size fit all answer for everybody. But what I will say, the first thing you should definitely do is earn money. I know that's like um, super crazy, but you can't. It's only four things you can do with money. You can earn it, you can spend it, you can save it, and you can invest it. The most important thing you can do is earn. You have to earn money to do any of those things. So figure out a way to earn money and get good at it. So whatever your profession of choice is, make sure that you're going to be an expert in that, and you're going to figure out how to earn as much money as possible. And regardless of what that level is, just make sure at that point you set up a plan. The first thing we all have to do, I mean, the second thing we all have to do is have a plan. Whether you sit down with a professional like me, or you're reading books, or you're just setting a budget, you're looking at Rocket Money and you're tracking your expenses and setting a budget. Set a plan. If you know you want to retire at 65, um, then start planning for that. Start saying, okay, how much is it going to cost me to live at 65? If my bills are 3,000 a month now, if and I'm going to retire in 20 years, what's the time value of $3,000 in 20 years? And how do I work backwards from that number to make sure that I have enough in retirement coming in guaranteed to cover that? Social Security is going to be this much, and say there's a 2,000 gap a month. How do I make up that 2,000 gap? So set a plan, and if you can do that yourself, great. If not, go talk to an expert. That's what they do. Don't be scared to talk to financial advisors when you don't have any money. That's when you should talk to a financial advisor. You start the habits as soon as possible, and that'd be my point 3. Start yesterday, and if you couldn't start yesterday, then start today. Don't wait till tomorrow. At least commit to getting information, to setting a budget, and starting to go through that process. And if y'all don't take anything else from me this whole time, make sure that you pay yourself first. Every time you make a dollar, make sure that part of the dollar go away. I know we do that through our 401ks. So those are lucky enough to have it through your 401ks. So that's part of it, paying yourself. You put money aside that's going to be there. It's going to grow for you. But even on top of that, figure out a way. Every time I have different bank accounts. I don't budget well. I'm not very organized. So I have to budget through my direct deposit. So one of my accounts on my direct deposit, I got a certain amount, first 10%, tithe, second 10%, pay myself first, third 10% go to a bill account. I mean, my third balance just goes to a bill account. I don't have a debit card for that account. Everything is going to be auto pay on my bills. A lot of that, my bills are paid on my credit card. And then I use that account to pay off the bills. But I know what my bills are. And that account is just a bill account. And then I have a discretionary account in my savings account and on my brokerage account. But if you can't budget, just try to build systems that make it easier for you to do it. So yeah, that'd be it. So earn more. 1, figure out whatever it is, just to earn as much money as you possibly can. Once you have that, make sure that you're paying yourself first. You're setting a budget, and you're the first prioritized item in that budget, and you're paying yourself first. 3, talk to an advisor to set up a plan. Just like you would do if you was taking a trip out the country, you have an itinerary. Same thing with investments and your future retirement. Everybody has to retire sometime. We can't work forever. So make sure you have a plan, and then set those goals. Like once you talk to that financial advisor and you start figuring it out, set those goals, write those goals down, and monitor that plan often. Like figure out how you are, how you're doing, along those things. Like I know I talked about this little weight loss journey as I started doing my fitness pal. So I'm counting my calories. I'm tracking what I eat. I'm counting my macros. I'm making sure that I'm on pace to hit whatever those goals are. Same thing with our money. Let's set like little checkpoints. So every quarter you should be talking to your advisor or whoever you're talking to, or even if you're doing it yourself. You should be having a check-in point where you're looking in, you're tracking your progress, you're seeing how did I do this quarter? How did I do this week? How did I do this month? Am I on pace to do the things that I set out to do? And lastly, get a group of friends and have these conversations with them. Like we need to start sharing information. Like Black people are super, super closed in historically. I'm generalizing a little bit, but historically we're closed in about money. We don't like to talk about money. We're the most philanthropic people on earth. We give away a bunch of money to charity and family and Black tax and all these things, but we never talk about it. We don't like to talk about how much we make. We don't like to talk about how much we're saving or how we're saving or what we're doing. And we need to. We need the information to keep getting spread around. If we do in our own little small circles, and those circles start to get big, and then they start to spread out, and those spread out circles start forming new circles, and they start talking about it, then this information start going everywhere. And sooner or later, that little wealth gap that we have in this country, it starts to dissipate a little bit. And now we start looking at policies and civil rights issues, and they start to hit a little less because we actually got a little bit of money, and that money comes power. So that was a long way to answer your question, Yams, but hopefully that was what you were looking for.
I love the whole bit of it though, because it breaks it down, it keeps it simple, and it's things that you can just work towards, and it reinforces the fact that community is how we get better. We can't do this shit alone. We can't.
Facts.
My last question, and then I'll see if Deb has any follow-up questions, is I know at the beginning of the episode you said that you had a goal to make 100 millionaires. Is that what you said?
100 Black millionaires.
Yes. How many Black millionaires have you made so far?
I'm at 18.
Yes. Okay.
I've been doing it.
Okay.
It's 18 clients that I can pinpoint and say, hey, you're a millionaire now.
Listen, goals is for me to be on that list. That's all I'm
Let's
gonna
do
say.
it.
Facts.
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
Absolutely. And a book that I recommend that I'm rereading right now is called We Should All Be Millionaires, written by
Mm,
Rachel Rogers,
I'm
who is a
check that
Black
out.
woman who came from, from nothing and made a way for herself, and talks about earning more money and about closing the wealth gap and about how we have the power to do the things. And specifically, the audience is geared towards women, because women, there's different disparities with being a woman in addition to being Black. There's a
Mhm.
lot of things like laws and things that have been in place that have kept women financially in a chokehold also. So this book speaks to that a lot. And so, yeah, Deb, you got any questions? Anything you want
Hey, just to kind of piggyback off that, Coach
to?
Yams, what if I was to tell you that it's not complicated to be a millionaire. It's just not quick.
That's why I'm rereading this
That's
book,
it.
because it's super not hard. It's just you got to take the steps and be consistent and
Yep.
be knowledgeable about what's going on. Like, knowing your numbers helps you be more in control of
That's it.
what's happening. Because if you don't know what's happening, then yes, your money is going to be every damn where.
It's all about discipline. It's
Yeah.
about discipline and taking that first step to setting the process up, and the strategy and just following through.
Yes, indeed. Deb, whatever you want to do, go ahead.
Well, I want to know how to get in contact with you. And I'm also pretty sure that there might be listeners. So could you share with us the best way to contact you if we wanted to work with you?
For sure, LinkedIn is going to be the best spot, and that's just Tra Talley, TRA, last name Talley, Talley, on LinkedIn. If you can find me there, yeah, let's leave it there. We kind of regulated as far as giving out our business information um, online, but if they find me on LinkedIn, they can get all that information for sure.
Thank you so much for sharing this knowledge with us, Mr. Talley.
No worries, and if y'all need anything, don't hesitate to reach out.
Yes, thank you so much. This has been very helpful and very timely for my personal financial journey. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Um, that's all we have for y'all. I hope that y'all have gotten even just one gem from this. I know you probably done took at least 10. If you did get something, like, share, subscribe, let people know that we are having conversations like this so that we can all live better lives. And until next time, y'all take care.